All right, guys, today we are going to be talking all about Dallas, the good, the bad, the ugly, some pros and cons. And Abigail is going to give us the tea on this. Abigail, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's going to be fun, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this because Dallas is such a go-to destination. I feel like I personally have had friends and family who have moved there to the point where now if I go there, I will actually have people to visit.
Yeah, people to visit, yeah. Yeah, the
From
whole state of California is moving here, as far as I can tell. So come on down. Come on over.
Yes, like that's exactly it. So let's kind of talk about this. Talk a little about you moving to Dallas. What was your experience like? How long you've been there for? And any more info like that. So.
Yeah. So I was born in Dallas a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you how long ago. I was born in Dallas, and then I left for high school and college and, life. And I've lived in a lot of other big cities. I've lived in New York City. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in Mexico City. And I came back, about 15 years ago, came back to Dallas. And I thought, when I left here as a teenager, I'm like, never coming back, never looking back, never going to go back to that place. And I accidentally ended up back here. And it had changed. It had grown up a lot since I was a kid. It was less insular, much more diverse, and really had more of a kind of big city feel. I think we're, one of the top cities now, which is crazy to me. I wanted to get to New York as fast as I could. So it was a little bit of culture shock coming back when I moved back 15 years ago, because I knew the place, but I didn't know the place. Everything had been built up. So it was hard for me, having not lived here as an adult, to figure out where to live. And I think in my first couple of years, I moved around a bit, trying to figure out, where to live, until I kind of found my place, and that made me very happy. And I had forgot how to speak Southern, so I had to relearn how to. I'm just kidding. I mean, you can't take the y'all out of me. But New York did take the fixin' to out of me. So I had to
the what out of you?
Fixin' to. I'm fixing to go to the store.
Fixing to go to the store. Okay.
Yeah, it means I'm going pretty soon. I'm getting ready to go. I'm fixing to. So so I had to get my Southern back a little bit. There was that. And then I had to deal with the heat, which is another big issue. And driving, that's the other thing. I had lived in big cities where I didn't really have to drive. Not so much Mexico City, I had to drive there, but in New York, I didn't have to have a car. In Chicago, I didn't have to have a car. So Dallas is huge, DFW is huge, and it's a very car-centric or vehicle-centric city. So a lot of driving. So those are kind of the culture shocks. Less culture shock was the culture. And that's where I really thought the culture shock was going to be. But then we have an amazing amount of culture here, much more diversity than when I grew up, much more. And, a great arts district, lots of restaurants, top restaurants, stores. I mean, it just, I haven't missed those things from the other big cities I've lived in at all. So
nice. So that is so interesting. Like coming back to a place that is familiar but completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah, you're like, it's like seeing an old friend. You're like, oh, I haven't seen you in 15 years. Like, you look different, but I know you. But I know you. I'm like, how are you?
Yeah, and it just everywhere was built up. Used to be that
taller buildings.
Well, yeah, built I live near downtown, so everything has built up. But also, just places that used to be country are now full of houses. And it took some mentally getting used to that. Wait, people live in McKinney? No, that used to be farmland mostly, and now it's blown up. So that sort of thing. I think that changed a lot in the years that I was gone.
Okay. So let's talk about a little bit some of the areas people are kind of within Dallas that people are moving to.
So I really specialize in the areas near downtown. That's what I love. And I think we're seeing a lot of young professionals migrate to these areas. We've got a lot of condos and townhomes and some high-rise living, fewer single-family homes, and that's great kind of lock and leave lifestyle. And if you're coming from San Francisco or LA or New York, and that's kind of what you're used to, that's what you're going to be comfortable with. So a lot of young professionals and a lot of empty nesters maybe moving here to be near grandkids are also kind of looking at that because they want to be near the action. So I live in Oak Lawn, and it's 5 minutes from downtown. It's also the neighborhood. It's where we have a lot of the hangouts that you would have. So a lot of the gay bars, a gay sports bar, which is the best place to watch the Super Bowl because they only care about the commercials, which is what I care about too.
And the halftime show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What was it? That one year was Bruno Mars. There's like, hey, there's this Bruno Mars concert this weekend, and they were talking about the Super Bowl. So yeah, it's totally, yes, halftime show and the commercials is like what it's all about. So it's a very vibrant neighborhood, very diverse. There are trees. I can look out my yard and see trees, which is amazing having lived in New York where they're few and far between. There's also focus on uptown that's maybe a little closer to downtown, fewer trees, but still that kind of, very urban living. It's quick to get to the Trader Joe's or to a park or, what have you. Our downtown is, it's more and more people are moving downtown. It's not a huge destination. There's not a lot of places there. You get a little east of downtown in Old East Dallas, kind of Deep Ellum area, Bryan Place. Then again, that's super up and coming. So lots of condos and townhomes that are being built right now today, and duplexes. If you drive down a street and then don't drive down for a few more weeks or a few more months, you drive down again, you're like, whoa, what happened here? There's new construction everywhere. So whereas Oak Lawn has been largely built for a while, Old East Dallas is still just booming. And then south of a little bit south of Dallas, Oak Cliff is also another booming, quickly gentrifying location. Bishop Arts District down there, lots of restaurants and shops and so forth. So very kind of vibrant urban living close in. You go a little bit further out and you hit Highland Park and University Park. Those are kind of the shishi areas with one of the best school systems in Texas. Yeah, the Highland Park Independent School District. And so that's mostly single family homes.
Independent, like more like apart from public, or like charter, or?
No, it's just that it's independent from Dallas.
Oh, got it.
So it's Dallas County, but they've got their own school district. So own school, own fire, own police, and so it's very desirable.
That would probably be like not Ladera Ranch type of in Orange County, where it's like in Orange County, but it's like its own thing.
Oh, its own little thing.
Yeah, they have their own school district, their own kind of like rules, like type of thing.
Everything's better.
It really is in Ladera Ranch, in Orange County area. Like, wow, where am I? Okay, cool. So,
and the home values are a lot higher, and the homes are much bigger. You don't have there are some duplexes and townhomes, but by and large single family homes there. And then as you keep going further and further out, more single family homes. We've got really a lot of good school districts. Maybe not Dallas ISD, but if you go a little bit further north, or a little bit further west, then a lot of great school districts. So a lot of people are moving to the Plano, Frisco, McKinney area. A lot of companies have ended up relocating there, Toyota probably being the biggest one a few years ago. So that's, people call it Dallas Fort Worth, and I'm like, when are we going to start calling it Dallas Fort Worth Plano? Because Plano is just blown up as a business district, and it's hardly a suburb anymore. It's kind of its own little orbit, and maybe Frisco's a suburb of Plano rather than of Dallas. But as you go out, the houses get bigger, the lots get bigger, and you have fewer condos and townhomes. But Yeah, and the further north you get, kind of the newer stuff is. The further south you get, the newer stuff is. So lots of new builds. Man, you can get almost to Oklahoma, it feels like right now. Just keep on going north and keep on going north, and new builds all the time because we need new housing.
Yeah. People are moving there, so it's evident. It shows in the housing that's being developed, or even just people moving. But let's talk a little bit about cost of living. So within those areas you were kind of describing, could you give us some examples of, single residence or condos, things like that, if people are looking to buy or rent?
Yeah. So median home price in Dallas is a little bit under $350 right now in the DFW area. So that's when you compare that to LA or New York or really anywhere, your jaw drops. That's why everyone comes from California. They're like, it's free. That's the median home price, right? And so that means we still have some affordability. I think once you start going north toward and you get into Plano ISD, Frisco ISD, the home prices go up. I think we're now at like $450 is the median there. So you certainly have a wide range, and you have $1 million plus homes as well. So we still have affordability, but I think unlike some cities where just everything is over $1 million now, right? I think we still have some affordability, but we also have some beautiful high-end areas as well. And in terms of condos, I think now kind of in Oakland, uptown area, on the lower end for a 2-bedroom, maybe you're going to get in the mid threes. And, condos, downtown condos with fabulous views, going up to 4 to 5 million. So there's a wide range, So there's something for everyone.
Absolutely.
I guess is how to say that.
Yeah.
Just for everyone.
Depending on like your lifestyle or your income by that means.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Super interesting. Okay. We talked a little about the culture. So like when you came back, had the culture changed, or was it like, what was it the same? Was it I guess.
Yeah. So I lived here as a teenager, right? It had been a long time, and I was living with parents, and it's a little bit different. And at the time, way back when, don't really need to discuss how old I am. Dallas still felt pretty insular.
What do you insular? What do you mean by that? Like,
not very diverse. Not diverse politically. Or racially, or pick your whatever, and just Dallas just didn't really have that, I guess, and that has changed significantly since coming back. So there's a lot more diversity. I think the world changed, for one thing. The demographics in Texas changed. Being gay became okay, so there's a huge vibrant gay community, whereas I think, before that always existed, but now it's blown up, so there are things that just weren't necessarily available in Dallas before that were now. Then again, I was a teenager, so, I can't tell you what the stuff I was missing out on, don't know. But also, in the intervening years, we've had a symphony hall built, several museums, concert hall, theaters, you take your pick. Like, there's just so much that has been built up in the arts district that there's so much more to do. Plus concert venues, huge concert venues I went and saw Chicago a couple weeks ago. Nice. At a pavilion, when it was like 90 something degrees outside. It was hot, but there's a lot more venues for cultural events, I think, and more of that going on, the more people and more need for it. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go into the weather. Currently it's summer in Dallas.
Let me tell you what the weather is right now, because it was supposed to go up to 108 today. 107.
Okay. All right.
That's what the forecast looks like pretty much for the rest of the week. So, and that's kind of where we were last week. I guess we were more like 103. So, I mean, we didn't know how good we had it. So this is a bit extreme. Like I won't be surprised if we break some records this year. Usually it doesn't quite get this hot until August. So we're all bitching and complaining about it, but we would bitch and complain in August too. So
yeah, August is always a hot one usually.
Yeah. So it's hot in the summer. You know, fall is mild if you get a fall that's not basically just summer. Winter is, you kind of never know. You know, last year we had power outages in the winter because it was so much colder than it had been, and our grid is not kind of made for the cold weather, I guess. So yeah, a lot of people had burst pipes and got new kitchens and bathrooms. So there's a silver lining to that. Yeah. But that's rare. I mean, really cold winters are rare, but you know, usually January, February are kind of the colder months. And then you have just a little bit of glorious spring, and spring is glorious. And you eat outside every day, you like go to every patio, and then it's summer again. And summer just seems to stretch on forever, but yeah, it's hot. So, you know, it's pretty livable when it's not summer. And I don't know, people live here during the summer too. Sometimes I wonder how we manage.
Yeah. Air conditioning is a must.
Air conditioning. Yeah. I am so thankful that I was born after air conditioning was invented.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, what did they do before? Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think also homes were just constructed differently, and
that's true.
Yeah. So
that's very true. That's true. Okay. So winter, you mentioned the power was out in Dallas and Texas, kind of the whole surrounding area. How was your experience like for that?
So we had what they called rolling blackouts, and they told us that it would be like 30-minute blackouts. Oh yeah, no, it was like we would have power for an hour every 12 hours, basically.
Oh shit.
And so they're telling you to conserve power. And heck no, the power would come on and I would run the heat at full blast, and then it would go off again. Oh, and then, you know, by the time it came back on again, it was, 50 something in the house, and I'm wearing coats and whatever. I also, pretty much lost everything in the refrigerator. The very first time the power went off was for a relatively short time, and I just kept waiting for it to come back on. I hard boiled all my eggs.
Smart.
So I was like, I'm not going to die of hunger, of not having enough protein, because you really couldn't get out to the grocery store or anything else. The grocery stores weren't open either.
Because they didn't have power either.
They didn't have power either.
Yeah.
Right. So they lost a lot of food. Yeah. So it was a bit shocking because we're just not at all used to that. I remember power outages in a storm when I was a kid. Again, I'm not going to remember the year, but we had a really bad ice storm. That was like the only other time I can really remember there being a serious power outage like that. Sorry, that was a cat running off behind me. So that was really rare, and hopefully it won't happen again. Although they're talking about, if they're worried about it having power outages now because we're taxing the grid so much. So apparently we need a better grid.
Yeah, I know. I watched a video on it, and it talked about how like Texas is on its own kind of power grid, separate from the rest of the U.S. Go Texas! I'm like all for the.
It's less regulated.
Yeah.
And we decided not to share. You do have your choice of electric companies, where most places don't. So that's that's one thing when people move here, they're like, which electric company should I choose? That's a really good question.
How do you choose? Like, what's the deal with that?
A few years ago, I sat down and just did all the math and figured it out because they give you the rates and you can't really compare. It's like trying to compare mattresses or something. Like they make it impossible. But even worse. And And then after that, they got bought out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I give up. So I use this service called Energy Ogre or something, Energy Ogre, and I paid them to figure out what's the best deal. And they just switch me when it's time, and it saved me a lot of money for sure the first year, and I don't think about it anymore. So, but I don't know that having choice in your electricity company, the electric company, is that helpful because it's so confusing at any rate.
Interesting.
But yes, we have our own grid, and that just sums up Texas for you.
Yes, right.
that is so Texas.
Texas is like ready to be independent at any moment. They're like, we're ready.
Yeah,
like,
we're ready.
Oh.
I don't know if you know this, that we're the only state that used to be a country. These are like, if you've ever met a Texan, they've told you that. The other thing, probably several times, the other thing is we're the only state in the union that can fly our flag at the same height and size as the US flag.
Oh, wow.
Because when we joined, that was one of the things that we're like, yeah, okay, we'll join, but.
There's a stipulation.
So
it's small, but it's big. It's like,
big.
it means
when you drive down the highway and you drive by the car dealerships and they've got huge flags, and it's like the huge American flag and the huge Texas flag, like 4 each in a row, and you're like, yep, only in Texas.
Yes, I'm all for it. It's just so unique. It's like, it's super. Yeah, I know. With culture, people, talk about how, people can tell when someone's not from Texas, they've just moved there, kind of a thing. What is that like for, I guess, people moving to the area, how they maybe respond, or what are some tips you kind of give to people who are like, hey, before you come here, here's what you should know, kind of thing? Practice
using y'all, because it's the most used word in the English language in this state. So practice using y'all. I think Texans in general are friendly. So I don't think that, it's not like New York where you just kind of try to keep to yourself all the time.
Yeah.
So I think people in Texas are friendly when they're not behind the wheel of their car, and that's a completely different story. But, so in that sense, yeah, okay, we can tell you're not from Texas, but I don't feel like there's, I don't feel like it's difficult in that way to get to know Texans, or to get to feel accepted, or that it's been my experience that we're nice. I'm nice. So yeah, but definitely practice the word y'all, because if you can't say that right, then, if you can't use it right, then you're really going to stick out.
Yeah. I had an experience in New York, because you mentioned New York, where I saw someone like spit gum on the ground, and like we made eye contact. I was a kid, and I was just like, and then they just walked away like nothing. And I was like, yeah. Whoa, I was like, where am I? And I was like, this is so strange. I
had the experience when I lived in New York for those are like 10 years. And anytime I were on the subway and they were like, okay, this line is going to stop and blah, 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 there's some problem, everyone has to get off, I would be the one that people came to, or to ask, like, where do we go now? Or if I was sit on a corner and there was someone looking at a map trying to figure out where to go, I was the one they would come to. I'm like, can they tell I'm from Texas? I don't know, but like, does it scream Texan? Because people approach me all the time. But when I moved to Chicago, I was walking down the street and I heard someone say, beautiful day, isn't it? I'm looking all over. I'm like, are you talking to me? Because that would never happen in New York.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it happens all the time here.
In Texas. Okay. People they're friendly. Like they'll approachable, I should say.
Yeah.
You can approach someone and just ask them a question or chat, and they're not gonna, I guess, like steamroll you or be upset that you're asking them for something.
Or think that it's out of the ordinary or weird, so.
That's the key. That's the key. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about like things to do around the Dallas area. So specifically the area that you're primarily focused in.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the best things about, being close to downtown recently is the city has done an incredible job of building out the parks and paths. So you can get all around the downtown area and even out to like the Arboretum in Lakewood, just walking in parks and walking on trails. So the trail system has expanded, the park system has expanded. One of my favorite parks is right downtown, Clyde Warren Park. And they basically put the park over the highway. So the highway goes underneath the park, and then on top of it is this beautiful park, and you can just walk across. They're doing a couple more of those, I think. And so the green space is really quite amazing. So that's one thing, when it's not 107 degrees.
Sure.
And I live very close also to the Katy Trail. So the Katy Trail used to be it's kind of like the High Line, I guess, in New York. It used to be a railway trail, and now it's a walking, biking, skating trail. Yeah. So, and that goes on forever. And then I think it hooks up with some other trails, and they just continue to expand that. So
nice. Are those a big hit?
Yeah. Oh, huge. Yeah. And and I think, I have people who very specifically want to live near the Katy Trail, for instance, want to be within distance, because it's a big part of their lives to get out and, walk the trail. Beautiful, got right close to that is Turtle Creek. Again, there's a big, beautiful creek running through, and parks on both sides. I mean, I think the city has done a really good job of green space and growing the green space and the trails. So there's that.
That's really neat. I'm a big fan of walking in trails and being outside and stuff. So and it's good for mental health and physical, just to walk around. That's so neat. We had like something like that in Whittier called the Greenway Trail, where it used to be a railroad back in the day, and they made it into a trail, and so many people use it. It's like, you're like, wow, people really like this. We should do more of this. This is great.
And it also, there are restaurants and bars on the trail as well. I mean, they face the street as well, but they back up to the trail. It also, the Katy Trail goes through Knox Henderson area, where there's a ton of restaurants and shops. So you can kind of hop on, hop off, and go shopping or get a Starbucks or whatever, get back on the trail. Or you can go down to the Katy.
And people bike on the trail and stuff?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So you can go down to the Ice House and get beer and some burgers and whatever. So really, there's a lot going on around there, and also around Clyde Warren. Clyde Warren has it's right up next to all the museums, lots of restaurants and other things around there as well. So really the trail system just continues to expand, and that's great. So green space is surprisingly good. Food is surprisingly good as well. So, I'm a big fan of eating. We've got
same.
Lots of great Tex-Mex, lots of great Mexican, but just a huge, wide variety of restaurants that are kind of, always coming and going. There's one of my favorites now is like a fusion of Asian and barbecue. Cool. So go figure, but that's a lot of fun,
That sounds good, actually.
Yeah. So there's always stuff, always somewhere new to go try out to eat. If you're a foodie, it's a good place.
Nice. Okay, that's good to hear. Yeah, there's a good variety of food. That's food and culture and just living it. It really affects you and just so many things. I feel like, especially if you're moving from an area, like from a spot, maybe you're used to having certain types of food, or good food, or or maybe you're used to having bad food. I don't know. So
we got it all. We got bad food too. We got it all. The other thing is, so in most cities you've got Grubhub or DoorDash or Uber Eats or whatever. We have a local one also called Favor. And
favor or flavor?
Favor, like
favor.
I'll do
favor. Okay.
And I use Favor way too often, but I don't really even think about Grubhub or DoorDash or any of those. I always go to my Favor app because it's Texas. I don't know. It's a Texas thing.
Is it like
Yeah,
the service is better or the pricing is better, or is it just it's just local thing or
it's local.
local? Cool.
I think they started out with a lot of um, good offerings. I think the pricing tends to be a little bit better for delivery, but whatever. I think also that it was local and that it's just so easy to put your credit card in once and order food all the time.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I've big fan of that, and you can get everything delivered. Now as in every other city, but that's a big perk as well.
Excellent. Texas is that. I'm like, that is very Texas to have their own food delivery.
Have our own delivery.
I'm like,
yeah, right.
what? Just in case you have to break off from the union at any moment.
Right.
We
We're
are
ready.
ready to go.
Dallas has its own car service too. It's called Alto, and it's like a luxury version of Uber or Lyft. And I think the drivers are paid, and I keep seeing their cars around, and I'm like, maybe I should try that, because you have to kind of sign up for it, and I guess they screen their drivers and everything. So yeah, leave it to Dallas to come up with our own thing. Leave it to Texas. Yep.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So you were saying some other things to do around the area, and
Yeah, so certainly plenty of museums to go to. One of my favorite is the Crow collection of Asian art, and you just kind of never know what's going to show up there. Like there's this crazy show on now, a woman who has come up with a whole, this is going to sound nuts, like an alternate universe with cartoon characters, and they all have superpowers and whatever, and they're all very colorful and kind of like colorful stuffed cartoon characters and big paintings. It's just not what you would expect in an Asian art collection, but totally cool. And I feel like every time I go there, it's like, oh wow, they've come up with something really interesting. We've also got a sculpture museum. We've got the Museum of Modern Art. There's plenty to see, and if that's what we've also got, the Perot Museum of Science. So plenty of things to go see. Also, like I said, lots of music and theater. There's kind of just always something going on. So it's hard to get bored. As my grandmother would say, if you get bored, then you're boring. So there's plenty to do. Yeah. And that, and just hanging out on the patios with a beer. It's probably another big pastime. One of my favorite go-tos. So when people come into town and they're like, let's go see something very Texas or very Dallas, I'm like, well, okay, people want to go see where JFK was shot. I'm like, okay. I'm like, we'll drive by and you can look, and then we can drive by again if you want, because it's this tiny little square, like there's nothing to see. It's kind of boring, but anyway. But the one. So instead of that, I'll take people out to Fort Worth, and we have this beautiful gardens out there. It's the water gardens, and I think they were built in like the 70s. And there's this old sci-fi movie called Logan's Run that's set. The end of it is set in the water gardens, and it's just amazing, kind of water sculptures. It's hard to explain. There's like a whole canyon almost of steps going down, and big waterfalls coming from everywhere, and you can go down into the middle of it, which seems like the least safe thing in the world, but it's beautiful. So I take people there.
What is it called?
Water Gardens. Fort Worth Water Gardens. So I love to take people there because it's so different and not what you have anywhere else, and people don't expect it. And then, I suppose you could go like to Billy Bob's or go see cows and stuff. That's not really me, but you could go do that.
Billy Bob's
of Texas. It's like a honky tonk, but a really big one.
What's a honky tonk?
Where people wear cowboy boots and stuff.
And
yeah. I don't have cowboy boots, but Fort Worth is much more kind of cowboy boot-ish. Yeah.
That's a style.
Yeah, Fort Worth is way more casual, much kind of slower paced, and you're going to see a lot more cowboy boots out. And I think when people think of Texas, they think of cowboy boots, and they come to Dallas like,
yes,
not really where we are.
And the hats.
Yeah, and Fort Worth is a little bit more like that. I think you have to get, I went to Amarillo for the first time a few years ago, and I was like, well, now this is what people think of when they think of Texas. But so those places do exist, but Fort Worth is a bit more country, a bit more cowboy boots.
Got it. All
right.
right.
You go to the stockyards and see the cattle, and go to Billy Bob's and do Texas line dancing, I guess, a two-step. I'm not quite sure. I have to admit, I've never been, but those are, if you want to do something quintessentially Texas, that's where you go.
Okay. The barbecue in Texas. I feel like, if you're coming to the South, you have to try some barbecue. Places in Dallas maybe you recommend, or in the surrounding area maybe?
What's going to be my favorite barbecue? I like Sonny's barbecue. And that's over on, I think it's on Inwood, and it's just like this old building that's been there forever, and super kind of hole in the wall place, but very authentic. They're not trying to, they haven't tried to do decor to make it look fancy, or to, to appeal to the hipsters or what have you. It's just authentic. I think that's my favorite. So yeah, there's a ton of barbecue. It'd be hard to pick other than that. I mean, there's great places almost anywhere with barbecue. Okay. So yeah, my boyfriend is a big fan. I have to talk him out of it. Sometimes it's not the healthiest thing in the world, but I'm like, no, can we just not do barbecue again? If he lives out of town, so every time he comes, he's like, so what barbecue place are we going to? I'm like, no, we can't have barbecue every time.
Gotcha. I understand. I feel that with tacos here in LA, where I'm like, oh look, I could just get tacos right there. Why not? Even though I know it's unhealthy, it's great. Yeah. It's convenient, it's nice, it tastes good, lots of salt. Right. And then I was surprised when I went to Mexico, the tacos didn't have as much salt, and I was like, is that just an LA thing?
Well, their tacos are totally different too.
Yeah,
I think,
because you've lived in Mexico.
Yeah, I've lived in Mexico. So much more basic, always a corn tortilla.
Yep.
My rule is, if somebody asks you if you want a flour tortilla, you are not in a Mexican restaurant, you are in a Tex-Mex restaurant. So that's how you know.
Got it. Okay, let's change gears. You alluded a little bit about the local economy. So you said, a company, I know, well, let's just talk about it. Let's talk about the local economy.
The local economy. Yeah. So one of the great things about Dallas is we have a very diverse economic base. So, there are some places, like Houston is very much oil based, and import export being closer to the Gulf of Mexico. And Dallas is like everything. We've had a lot of financial companies move here, insurance companies, Toyota moved here. It's I feel like every day it's somebody else moving here. Yep. Also quite a few retailers based here. Neiman Marcus. I was with Neiman Marcus for many years.
Oh.
Neiman Marcus, GameStop, JCPenney, 7-Eleven. I mean, there are a lot of retailers based here as well. So we have done well. Like in 2008, where you saw the downturn really affected some cities very badly, and Dallas recovered super quickly. And I think also during the pandemic, we were also one of the first to recover. It's just that there's so many industries, we're not kind of tied to one. So, and I think companies come here because their employees want to come here because the cost of living is pretty good, and there's no state or local income tax. Now, property tax is a bit higher than most places, maybe not higher than California, but there's no state income tax. And so that's, one of the reasons that businesses like to move here. Also, not so much regulation, which is like good and bad when you can't get power, good when, so because our power grid's not so well regulated.
The pros and the cons. It's like, hey, there's no state income tax, but we might not have power once every like 20 years. So
there's that.
Okay, that's it's always in the news. Yeah, I always see like so and so's moving to Florida or to Texas. They're relocating their whole company, and people are. I've even seen articles where, you know, like whatever 100 employees they'll move, half of them will be like, yeah, we're going, and then half are like they'll just get different jobs. So that's like always a interesting phenomenon, I think, because it's like to move your whole entire life with a company is like kind of fascinating.
Right.
But
Especially in this economy where people don't stay with the same company for their entire careers like they used to. But yeah,
right.
I think we're also seeing a lot of, this work from home trend helped the, not like we needed more people to move here, but it certainly helped that the influx, the immigration into Dallas and into Texas in general, because the cost of living is better. And that's why sometimes it feels like all of California is moving here. And they also feel like everything's free. The houses are free, which is not entirely true, but
right. They can afford to like buy or rent a house,
right,
as opposed to renting an apartment or renting an apartment and saving like seems like for eternity, and then not. It's like, when am I able to buy a house? And
and they can come and get a yard and have a dog and have kids and things that are just so much more expensive in other cities. So I think that's, another reason. So we're getting a lot of work from home workers, so that companies didn't have to move here to get them to move here.
Yeah, it's so interesting. In terms of the local economy, also like, we have like these big companies that are moving there, but what about like maybe smaller family owned businesses and stuff like around the area?
Yeah, well, the retailers I named off are probably some of those other homegrown businesses here.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more like just like those hole in the wall kind of like places where you're like, oh, there's, and maybe what's a good example? I think of like small bakeries that are here, and you're like, oh, hey, like there's that one place, or those really small like jewelry stores or boutiques kind of things. In the downtown area, is that like a thing, or is it just mostly a mix, or bigger businesses?
It's a mix, but I would say that we have a lot of small businesses as well. Where I live in Oakland, any of the areas kind of around downtown, and partly because you've got a lot of restaurants and a lot of little stores and that sort of thing, and those tend to be, if you want to call them mom and pop, so yes, we have a lot of that. I remember years ago living in New York, and then suddenly there was a Starbucks in every corner, there was a Gap every 10 blocks or whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, because New York used to be a ton of little mom and pop shops. Everything was mom and pop, and you knew your greengrocer. I remember being able to go into the grocery store, or this tiny little grocery store, having forgotten my wallet, and they're like, that's okay, we'll put it on the account, you can pay it next time. That wouldn't happen here because all our grocery stores are really big. But there was that kind of, New York would be a big city with little community feel, because you knew your greengrocer, you knew the dry cleaner, you knew the hardware people, we had all these little stores. And then I was there when you kind of, it became the standardization of retail, right? Where everything was the same. And I would say that certainly that's true everywhere, right? There's Starbucks everywhere. My gosh, there's, take your pick here. 3 of them kind of equidistance from me, right? But we also have independent coffee places, lots of independent restaurants, independent stores. And personally, I try to support them. So one of my favorite places to eat is Lucky's, and that's locally owned. It's a kind of farm to table diner. So I'm at Lucky's all the time. And then I used to do an event before COVID every year at a local kind of home gift shop. So we definitely have plenty of that, plus bakeries, plus you take your pick. But yes, it's a very vibrant business community. Like everywhere, we lost some of them during COVID, but new things are popping up. So
great. Okay. And so like if I wanted to come to Dallas, which I do, I would love to. One of these days, I might drive. But for the average person who, I would like to fly also one of these days to Dallas. But flying into Dallas, you just, if I'm gonna be staying around the area, where would you recommend like I stay to like kind of explore Dallas and stuff?
Well, if you really want to explore Dallas, I'd say uptown or downtown, just to be in the middle of everything, right? So, and we've got two airports, DFW, Dallas Fort Worth International Airport, huge airport, and that's in on a good traffic day, maybe 20 minutes from here, and then much closer, like I'm in the flight path, is Love Field. And Love Field's like 5 minutes away. And so for a long time, Love Field was only Southwest Airlines. It's still primarily Southwest Airlines, but there's a couple other airlines that fly out of there now. It's expanded a lot. So, as a transportation hub, it's super easy to get in and out. If I can fly out of Love Field, I would much prefer it because it's just basically right here. It's so easy to get to, and it's smaller, and it takes less time to get through security and all that kind of stuff, right? So we've got that. And then just, if you wanted to stay at a hotel nearby, I'd say maybe the Melrose here in Oakland, because it's a bit historic, and they've got some, a fun bar downstairs that I particularly like. So you could go upscale and like go to the W or go to the Ritz, or go, if you want to go downtown. But there's plenty of places to stay. And if you stay around kind of the downtown, uptown Oakland area, it's real easy to explore from there. Now, if you're coming in for business, maybe you're going to stay out closer to the airport, but lots of places to come.
No, that was perfect. That answered my question. Because when I went to Mexico, we went to Guanajuato, and we should have stood more in the city central, but lessons learned. For us, it was like, all right, next time we're gonna stay closer in the center. For next time. So, but that's okay. Awesome. For schools, so you kind of we talked just a tad about schools, but dive a little bit more into the schools around the area, all around Dallas. What's the general kind of consensus?
Yeah, so Dallas ISD is not everyone's favorite. I don't think it's not super highly rated. We do have a couple of magnet schools that I think are good. The caveat is I don't have kids, so this is not super top of mind for me all the time. Highland Park Independent School District is one of the best. But buying in over there, you're talking $2 million on the very low end to buy into the neighborhood. Plano, Frisco, McKinney, Allen, these are all north. They've got great schools. South Lake, Capel, Carrollton, Hearst, Euless. We have so many A-rated school districts when you get a little bit outside of Dallas. So there's a lot to choose from. So really good school districts. In Dallas proper, if you're not in Highland Park School District and you want a top school, there are a lot of private schools. And so, a lot of people end up sending their kids to private schools.
Awesome. No, that was great. Magnet schools being also they're like charter schools kind of a thing.
Yeah, I know less about the charter schools, but in magnet schools, I guess magnet school and science magnet, and what have you.
Oh, okay. So they're there's a specialization type of thing for those magnet schools.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Okay. What do you not like about Dallas, in terms of living in Dallas?
That it's 107 degrees. I mean, that would be number one on my list. It's just, that's awful. Mosquitoes. So in the summer we have mosquitoes, although I'm wondering it may just be too hot for them, because I'm shocked. I'm shocked at the lack of mosquitoes. I don't know, maybe we killed some of them with the freeze, but I think people coming from California are always shocked at the mosquitoes. That makes living outside a little bit tougher. And driving, I am not a huge fan of driving personally, and you can't get around without driving, right? I could walk to the grocery store, I suppose, because I'm somewhat close to a Whole Foods, but I couldn't carry that much back with me. And, I've lived in big cities where I never drove anywhere. And here, we're all over the place. And while I say I kind of concentrate in the areas around downtown, it's not all my business, right? I end up selling all over the place and helping clients all over the place. And so You can just be driving forever and ever. And people coming in from out of town they don't have a city picked out, right? And so they're like, well, let's check out these 4 or 5 and see if we can find something near a good school district, especially in low inventory times. So there's a lot of driving around everywhere. And Texans are super nice in person and super jerks behind the wheel. I don't quite get that. It's like, as soon as you get behind the wheel of the car, you're anonymous.
Game on. Let's go.
Super aggressive. And, I'm one of those people who gets really upset with people who get in the left lane and drive slow. I'm like, do you not know the rules?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely rules of the road here where if you're going to go in the left lane, you better be going 10 to 15 miles over the speed limit at least. At least. Yeah. At least, because otherwise you are in the way and you are like an accident waiting to happen.
Right.
So,
yeah, or road rage, people get very upset.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. When I was in the South, and I noticed people drive faster. Pretty fast. Like I was in like Georgia and North Carolina on the freeway, and people like they're going pretty quick. And I mean, I drive pretty fast on the freeway in California enough to not get a ticket. That's usually my speed limit. I can't afford one.
Yeah, we've got a lot of 70-mile-an-hour highways, and then if you get a little further outside of the city, you've got 75-mile-an-hour highways. So I don't think every state is quite as liberal in their speed limits, let's say, or lack thereof. But yeah, there are highways you get on if you're not going 10 miles over the speed limit, like you're in trouble. So, yeah.
It's interesting. Okay, and what are some things you love about Texas and Dallas?
What do I love about Dallas? The winters aren't usually very cold, so I'm a big fan of that. So I hate the weather. I love the weather. The people are so incredibly friendly. I feel like it's just easy to get to know people. And I have lived in other places where it's been a bit harder, I guess. So, I think that's great. Texas pride. I mean, there's just something to be said about being in Texas and being from Texas. It's like, I can go to anywhere in the world and everyone knows Texas.
Yes.
Everyone knows Texas. And most people know Dallas because of the show, right? So I can go anywhere. Whereas like, if you told me you were from Indiana and you were in China, they'd be like, I don't know where that is. So that's a nice thing about being from Texas and living in Texas. Like everybody knows Texas. And I would say, food is way up there. Things I love in Texas. And it's a good travel hub. I love traveling, and I've been to like 20 plus countries and counting, and Dallas is a good travel hub. It's pretty central,
yes,
no matter which way you're going. So, you can get to the West Coast or the East Coast relatively easy, and, the time zone is kind of right in the middle as well. So there's something to be said for that. My brokerage has this club called the 6 a.m. Club. It's 6 a.m. in New York, and you get up and they have a little, they talk about nice things and good things, whatever. They have a little meditation, and then I'm sure they tell you how to have a bit better business. And there is no way I could do a 6 a.m. call. Like, no way now I could do a 6 a.m. call.
That's pretty early.
I got on a few times. So I was like 7 a.m. Like, okay, yeah, maybe. It turned out that I really couldn't do a 7 a.m. call either. But I like the fact that at least it's an hour. It's not, we're not having to be on that 6 a.m. call. Sorry, got that backwards. It's 6 a.m. in New York. Our 6 a.m. was we do the West Coast one. That's why it's better. Is it 6 a.m. on the West Coast now? It's 8 a.m. here. So I got that backwards. I do that all the time. But yeah, so we would be on the West Coast 6 a.m.ers, which is really 8 a.m. here, which is like, yeah, I could do that.
That's good.
But I don't. So yeah, I prefer that if there were like a 10 a.m. club, be totally into that.
I don't think they're going to change the rules for you, Abigail.
But that's my kind of club.
You'll have to start your own club.
That's my kind of club, 10 a.m. Yeah. But those are, it's funny that when I was a teenager, I wanted to get out of here so fast. And, now that I'm back, I'm like, this place is pretty cool. It's okay. I mean, like, it's got everything that big cities have with very few of the big city hassles. So I think,
that was a good line. That was so good.
And I think that's what makes it so popular. You know, it's the lifestyle's just easier. Cost of living is doable. You know, I can't imagine moving back to New York. Like, paying rent in New York would be insane these days. Or trying to move to LA or worse, San Francisco. Like it's just exorbitant. And here it's, you know, it's livable, like, and yet you have all the big city stuff here if you want it. Yeah.
That's so good. Well, that's when you know you're home, when you've went away from home and you've come back and you know, and it would be weird to leave. So it would be strange to live somewhere else.
Like I wish I could like make it a little bit cooler in the summer, but okay. Yeah. Thank goodness for air conditioning.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, cool, Abigail. This has been really cool. I'm really glad we've been able to chat. Last question. Is there any questions I didn't ask you that you kind of wanted to address, or something I didn't touch on?
Well, you didn't ask me about Six Flags over Texas. Just kidding.
Six Flags. Yeah, or the amusement park.
Yes. There really have been Six Flags over the state of Texas. So Six Flags is the Six Flags over the state of Texas. And now that I bring it up, I'm going to forget them all. But Mexican flag.
That's why it's called Six Flags.
That's why it's called Six Flags. The Mexican flag, the French flag, the state of Texas, the country of Texas, the United States, and there's one I'm missing.
One more. Let us know in the comments. The last flag that we're missing.
Six Flags over Texas. Yeah, but that's why it's called Six Flags. That's another, like, you know, if you know a Texan, they'll tell you that Texas used to be a country. It's one of those annoying things about being a Texan. Yeah, okay. Is that we like to talk about being Texan a lot.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's like they had their own culture before, and then they were kind of absorbed into the Union.
People ask me, like, what is Texas? Is it Southern? Is it South? Is it kind of Southwest? I'm like, no, Texas is really its own thing. Yeah, there's a little bit of all of that, and there's a little bit of Southern, but it's real different from like Georgia or Mississippi, which is, sorry, cat.
I love it.
So Texas is its own animal, basically. And that's kind of a great thing about Texas, personally, I think. So, yeah. Excellent.
All right.
We're our own animal.
Let's go. That's so good. All right, you guys, if you have any other additional questions for Abigail, her information will be up top and down below. And feel free to reach out to her. So, Abigail, thank you so much for...
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it.